Okay. Again, for those who I just let into the meeting, as a quick reminder, please type your name and MHSA ID number if you happen to remember it off the top of your head. Pop it into the chat box if you don't mind, please. And please note, you should have gotten a notification that the meeting is being recorded. So feel free to leave your camera on, put your camera off. When you ask a question, if you're talking, do keep in mind that it is being recorded for a lot of other individuals who are working a lot of makeup games tonight and are not able to be here. As we are going to be going on, we were planning to have a little bit of fun and go through some common myths. And so it's going to be somewhat interactive. We're going to have quizzes, and it's going to be in the format of true or false. We like to say truth or myth, a little bit more fun that way. And all you have to do is select, is it a truth or is it myth? We'll talk about very briefly and go through those. And at the end, we are going to briefly discuss the importance of this time of year and often some of the emotions and some things that can kind of happen during your games at the end of January, beginning of February, where frustrations and other emotional stressors are hitting the players, the parents, and the coaches. And how do we deal with that? And how do we report those out? Um, with that said, we have a few brief announcements. Bob Check is on the line. I am just going to say for him, and he can jump on if he would like to. But with all the snow days, there are probably likely many games that are getting rescheduled, are going to be made up. And so if you are available, go in and update your schedule that you're available so you can get some help from Bob or Gary or any of the other local signers who are looking for officials to work those makeup games. And before I let Bob jump on if he'd like to, I do want to turn it over to Jim Dorman for a brief announcement regarding game official fees. Jim?
Yeah, there have been rumors about what's happening with game fees for the future, and I will tell you that our association leadership um, back in September made a substantial presentation to the Southeast Michigan Council of Athletic Directors, and that was Shane, Dante, Mike Schramm, myself. Also Darren Ford from the Detroit Officials Association. Put a lot of effort into it. And the ADs have been debating this, amongst themselves. We understand that a decision was reached on what they're recommending to all the leagues that was reached yesterday. We don't know what that was yet. But we understand there's going to be substantial fee increases, not the $5 or $10 type increases that we'd see in the past, but a jump into for varsity fees into triple digits. From where we are now at 75, and freshmen and JV also to follow. So when we have that information, we'll give it to you. Our understanding is each of the leagues has to, have their own meeting and adopt, what their fees are going to be based on, in part on this recommendation from this athletic director council. But it's coming soon. We'll let you know when it happens. But we're expecting pretty good news. The second thing I want to say is because it's tax season, when you're doing your taxes, the IRS mileage rate for 2023 was 65.5 cents per mile. So that's what you can deduct on your, your transportation to and from your games. 2024, it's gone up to 67 cents a mile. So keep that in mind as you go forward.
All right. And I also thank you, Jim, for that information. I also want to say that we appreciate being able to be part of the conversation with the superintendents, so we're able to make our case for the association members. And so we think it was a good process, good conversation, and like we said, we'll let you know all the details as soon as we are able to confirm all the details too. But so far, so good. So, with that said, I'm just going to pause. Bob, if you have any other announcements you want to make besides what I already said for you, feel free to unmute yourself and share those. And if anybody else has any brief questions right now, feel free to use either the raise hand function on Zoom or unmute yourself, and you can ask that now before we get into the meat of our meeting.
Okay, Shane, can you hear me?
We can hear you, Bob.
Okay, I'll just tell the guys to get their arbiter up to date. There's a lot of makeups coming, and it'll be coming on as we go. So just keep your arbiter up to date and check it on a daily basis, and we'll do everything we can to keep everybody busy.
All right. Thank you, Bob. And the other thing I would like to just remind everybody, I've had some officials reach out to me and ask me for some film of their game. And I've often talked about you can buy a subscription to the National Federation High School Network. And a lot of high schools do broadcast their games on that. And after the game, the live play has been broadcast, they will put it on demand. And then you can go back and watch that game and watch yourself on film whenever you want. If you don't have a subscription to that, or if that school, that site did not use or does not use the NFHS network broadcast system to broadcast their games, reach out to me and I can work to get a download of your game with the coaches. They often use the Huddle program. And although we do not have ourselves a Huddle account for basketball, we do for football, but not for basketball, I'm able to get a download of the game, and I'm able to upload it to what is called an unlisted YouTube link, meaning only those with the direct link can find the game. And I can get you that link so you can watch your game or just a particular play or something. And all I can say is, if you have never had the opportunity, or if it has been a very long time to watch yourself on film, is probably the best or one of the best tools at getting better. It is something I don't mind doing. In fact, I kind of enjoy it. So feel free to reach out to me with the game, the matchup, the date and the time, JV, varsity, etc., freshman, and I can work to get you a copy of your game so you can observe yourself. So with that said, we are going to go into just some quiz questions. And again, please take the opportunity to log in and click, truth or myth. The more people that do it, the more fun it is. We're not keeping score per se, but it'll be a good time. So with that said, I am going to go ahead and get it started here.
And also remember to put your name in the chat so we can mark your attendance, because I know there are more people attending than there are names in the chat.
All right. So let's get started. And if you are watching this, as a recording, you unfortunately will not be able to see the question presented on the screen like those who are in live attendance can see it. It just won't work with Zoom, but I will read it for you, and you should be able to follow along if you are watching the recording. So the first question is, it's a warm-up. It's a warm-up question. Myth or truth? If it looks funny, it's almost always a travel. It's just that looks funny, that looks ugly. Aren't those always a travel? Okay, all right. I usually looks like we were getting about 2/3 participation. I think for this one, I think that's pretty good. Going to end the poll and I'm going to share the results. And the correct answer is that's a myth. Just because something looks strange or it looks a little weird or goofy doesn't always mean it's a travel. Jim, I'm going to turn it over to you, but I think a common example that maybe 5 to 10 years ago we started to see was the Euro step. A lot of people weren't used to seeing that, and it often got called as a travel when it really wasn't.
Yeah, here's one rule of thumb is you can't travel if you're not holding the ball. So you'll see people fumbling, bobbling as they run up the court, trying to get a grip on the ball. None of that is a travel, even though everyone in the crowd will be hooting and hollering, and yelling for a travel. It's not. You can't travel if you are not holding in control of the basketball. So keep that in mind. And the other thing is for a travel is, again, identify the pivot foot. And if the pivot foot comes off the ground, it can't go back on the ground, while the player is still holding the ball. And it can't come off the ground before a player releases the ball on a dribble. If you keep those things in mind, you'll get your travel calls correct.
Right. Especially with something that looks very strange, it is okay to take a half a beat of rhythm in your head to process what you saw. And if it was a travel, then you can blow your whistle. If it was not, and a coach asks you, wasn't that a travel? Just get your answer ready. Coach, he established his left foot as his pivot foot. He did not slide that pivot foot, even though it looked strange. That pivot foot stayed put. And that's all you gotta say. All right. So let us keep moving right along here and go to number 2. During a designated spot throw-in, a player may move their feet without being called for a throw-in violation, even if they back up 5 feet or more, or they move a whole 1 to 2 feet to either side after being given the basketball. Is that true, or is that a myth? Is it true, or is that a myth? Let's see here. We got about 24, 25 participants. See if we can't get about 2/3 to join us. Okay, here we go. Okay. The correct answer is that's true. That's true. And Jim, you want to kind of go into the lateral restrictions and then the vertical restrictions?
Sure. On a spot throw-in, you've got the thrower has a 3-foot wide space. And as long as, any part of their body, one toe is over that 3-foot wide space, they're okay moving, to their right or left before releasing the throw-in. So in general, one good shuffle step either way is not going to be an issue. When you get into 2 shuffles, well, it depends how big the shuffles are each way and how big the players are. Now, in terms of depth and backing up, a player can go backwards away from the court as far as the room will let them. There's no restriction on the depth, so a player could, back up 10 feet if he wanted to before, throwing the ball in bounds. There usually isn't that much space, but that's possible.
Yep.
One other thing along the lines of this is a player could dribble the ball, in his 3 foot wide throw-in space. There's nothing against bouncing it. As long as the pass going inbounds, touches inbounds first before it touches out of bounds.
Yep. I mean, they could spin around. There's a lot of kind of goofy stuff that they can do as long as they stay within that 3 foot lateral space, so much as like have 1 foot over that 3 foot space. So that was a truth. All right, I'm going to stop sharing and we'll go to the next one. All right. A player sliding across the floor while in possession of the ball is always a traveling violation. Myth or truth? Sliding across the floor while in possession of the ball, always a traveling violation. Myth or truth? All right. And while we're waiting for a couple more people to answer this one, just so you know, some of these for more experienced officials, you might say, I know all these. I'm just going to log off or I'm going to stop watching this. I do have some good ones coming up here, even that might catch some of us more experienced officials off guard. So stay tuned. All right. So this one is a myth. Jim, when somebody is sliding with the ball, when is it and when is it not a travel?
So if a player holding the ball falls down onto the court with the ball, that's going to be a travel. If they're standing, holding the ball, then they fall onto the court, it's a travel. If the player dives for a loose ball, grabs the ball, and his momentum keeps him or her sliding, that's legal. And while that momentum is still causing the slide, a player can actually roll while the momentum is still, in effect. Once that slide from their original dive comes to a halt, they can't roll. All they can do is, if they're on their back, sit up, or pass the ball, or shoot, or start a dribble. If they roll with the ball once their momentum stops, that's going to be a travel.
An easy way when those kind of chaotic plays are going on is much like finding a travel during a normal play, is find the pivot point. So if somebody is sitting on the ground while holding the basketball, the pivot point is their backside. They can spin around on their butt. They can lean back, lay down, and sit up. So long as that pivot point, in that case their butt, stays put, they're all good. And if they're already on their stomach and their momentum has come to a stop and they have the ball, their pivot point is now their stomach. That's why if they roll over, they have now changed their pivot point from their stomach to their butt, and that's why it's a travel. So it can be helpful to think about what is the pivot point in this instance. And like Jim said, while that momentum is going on, they could roll over, etc. So,
and one other thing is, this is a time when there's a player on the ground with the ball, whether sliding or stopped. This is a time where people call timeout. So if you're the covering official on this, you want to pay careful attention and listen to all the players around you. And if you're the off-ball official, it's a good time to take a look toward the coach, because this is a prime time where timeouts are called.
Yep.
To avoid the travel.
And if you have to make that call, blow your whistle and emphatically signal, coach has timeout, player had sole possession. Coach had timeout, player had sole possession.
And I see a chat question, and yes, if the momentum is still going, the player can roll.
Yep.
But keep in mind that, people don't usually slide for that long. So it's got to be dive in a pretty quick roll and pass for that to happen.
Yeah. All right. Next one, moving on. When a shooter catches their own air ball, try for goal, it is always a traveling violation. I take a legitimate shot, but I'm not very good. Please reserve your jokes, keep them to yourself about my skill level. And it's an air ball, and I realize, oh shoot, it's going to be an air ball, and I hustle to go grab it out of the air. That's always going to be a traveling violation. Myth or truth? All right.
This is a play you see a lot in middle school,
Freshman.
CYO.
All right.
And frankly, I saw it in a girls' varsity game last night.
It can happen. All right, here we go. All right. It is a myth. It is a myth. Most of us got this right, but a few of us, got this wrong, and that's okay. Jim, I guess, care to explain or?
Well, it's an NBA only rule that it's a travel to catch your own air ball. That is an NBA rule. It's not a rule in college or high school. A shot, what we judge as a shot, ends team control and ends player control. And it's a new possession when a player catches his or her own air ball.
And I think the key point here is in the official's judgment, if it was a legitimate shot attempt, they could go and catch their own air ball.
And if you're not sure, call the shot.
Err on the side, your default brain should be thinking this is a shot unless I really think this player is trying to pull a fast one on us.
And in 30 years, I've never seen it not be a real shot attempt.
Yeah. All right. That was a good one. All right. Number 5. When the basketball is in the front court for Team A, player A1 should always be called for 3 seconds if they are in the lane for more than 3 seconds. Myth or truth? When the basketball is in the front court for Team A, player A1 should always be called for 3 seconds if they are in the lane for more than 3 seconds. Answers aren't coming in quite as fast on this one. I'm not sure if it's because of the way I word the question or because of what we're asking. All right. All right, here we go. It looks like we got most people have answered it. Okay, that one is the myth. Jim, why would it not be 3 seconds if that player is standing in the lane for more than 3 seconds?
Well, if the player gets the ball that is in the lane within the 3 seconds, 2.999, catches the ball in the lane, the rule allows the player an allowance to make an attempt at a shot. So in essence, the 3 seconds gets extended as long as that player has the ball in the lane until a shot is released. But if anything other than a shot happens, if the player passes the ball, I guess that's about all else that could happen.
It's going to end up being
or starts a dribble in the lane. I guess that could happen too. Then it's going to be a 3-second violation. That allowance ends when it's, the next action isn't a shot or a pivot to take a shot.
So player A1 has been in the lane for 2 seconds. They are given a pass and they turn around immediately and they take a shot attempt. And because they're just so much taller than everybody else, they grab that rebound and they pump fake a couple more times and they're in the lane for another second or two and they take another shot. They miss again, but again, they're a foot taller than everybody. They grab that rebound again pump fake, 1 or 2 seconds more in the lane, and they take another shot, and there are no 3-second lane violations being called. Why aren't they being called in that example?
Well, 3 seconds can only be called when Team A, the offensive team, is in control of the ball. There's team control. And if you read the definition of team control, and for your newer officials, I would tell you to get out your rule book and learning the definition of team control, when it starts and when it ends, is one of the more important things you can do because so many rules depend upon team control. But team control ends when a shot is released. So if a shot is released before a 3-second violation, all the counts stop and they won't begin
Reset.
again until team control is reestablished.
Yep. Now, related to 3 seconds, I have an extra one here. Number 5, Myth or Truth bonus. With Team A in possession of the basketball in their front court, player A1 has half of one of their feet in the 3-second lane for more than 3 seconds. This, by rule, is a 3-second violation. Is that truth or is that myth? And I do want to emphasize the by rule aspect of the way I phrase that. All right. Looks like most of us have chimed in here. And most of us got that one correct. It by rule is a 3-second violation. And you may have coaches who know that is technically by rule a 3-second violation, and they're yelling at you to call the 3-second violation. Jim, would you kind of talk about how we don't necessarily want to make this our best call and how we can maybe talk to the coach who is technically correct?
There's one thing I would say to add to your question. If he has half of his foot in the lane without the ball, because if he had the ball, that allowance would take effect. But by rule, if any part of your body is touching the floor in the lane, you're in the lane. So if half of your foot is on the lane line, you're in the lane. And to get out of the lane, by rule, if you lift that foot, it has to touch down outside the lane, because just standing on one foot where the other one had been in the lane, by rule, you're still considered in the lane until that foot touches down outside the lane. I would tell you, keeping in mind the whole advantage disadvantage philosophy, don't be too tight on this call. Unless you have some guy that's posting up that's a foot taller than someone else, and there really is a true advantage gain, not just a theoretical advantage gained. 3 seconds can be a slippery slope if you start calling it.
Right.
Strictly by the rule. The better tactic is just to, be preventive officiate. Yell, get out, or lane. I just yell lane. At the more experienced official level, lane, they know what you mean. If you're working varsity games, just yelling lane, they'll get out. If you're doing 5th and 6th grade CYO, you probably have to yell, get out of the lane. Because they don't know. If you just yell lane, they have no clue what you're saying, and they might not even know what you mean when you say get out of the lane. But those calls can be game interrupters when they're not, a player in the lane isn't necessarily gaining a competitive advantage.
And what I might say to a coach who's technically correct, but is like screaming because they want that call, I might say something to the effect that, okay, coach, I hear what you're saying. We're on it. We'll take care of it. And then frankly, what I'm going to do is as soon as I can, when I'm down in front of the other coach, I'm like, Coach, would you tell 32 to get in and out of the lane a little bit more regularly, please? Help me out here. He can't just have a half a foot in the lane. And let that other coach kind of help you out. To Jim's point, preventative officiating. We don't want to make this our best call and split hairs in it if there is not a clear advantage being gained.
And also beyond telling the coach, you get a stoppage in play, like a foul call or people lining up for free throws. Go tell the player yourself, hey, you got to get out of the lane.
Yep. All right, moving on. Number 6. When a basketball touches a player's foot, it is always a kicking violation. True or false? Or myth or truth? Excuse me. Myth or truth? I'm going to copyright that. When a basketball touches a player's foot, it is always a kicking violation. All right. Looks like most of us got this one, and I'll end it and share it. The correct answer is it's a myth. Jim, would you want to explain kind of when a ball touches a foot, when is it a kickball? What makes that touching a kickball?
Here it is kicking is an intentional act. The player has to be purposefully kicking at the ball. And it's not just his foot. They changed the rule. It's really any part of the leg now. But the person has to be, trying to kick the ball, whether it's with his foot, whether it's with his shin, whether it's with a knee, whatever. They have to be purposefully doing that, not just moving to get in the way of a pass and the pass happens to hit them in the foot. It has to be a true attempt to kick at the ball.
Yep. An intentional act. I was watching one of my kids' games about a week or two ago. It was a fast break. A defender was running to get back, wasn't even looking at the ball, and the offensive player threw the ball right off of one of his foot. And there was no call. And that was correct because it wasn't intentional. Now, there was a bonus one, and Jim, I think you already beat me to it. But truth or myth? A player may not intentionally hit the basketball with any part of their leg. This is a kickball violation, even though it wasn't kicked with the foot and or leg below the knee. A player may not intentionally hit the basketball with any part of their leg intentionally. Truth or myth? I'm just going to end it now. I see everybody got 100%. That is the truth. If they intentionally stick out their leg and it hits their lower thigh or a knee, it's a kickball. If it's an intentional act. All right, moving on. Stop sharing and we'll launch this one. It is only a dribble when a player intentionally bats the ball to the floor. Unintentional deflections of the hand should never be considered a dribble. Truth or myth? See how we do here for this one. It is only a dribble when a player intentionally bats the ball to the floor. All right. Looks like we got a little over 2/3. Here we go. Share the results. The answer is true. Jim, you want to kind of talk about the most common example where we maybe see this erroneously called perhaps a double dribble when maybe it shouldn't, and what should be our default thought process when we see this?
This happens a lot when someone drops a pass. Their teammate throws them a hard chest pass and they muff it and they drop it. And then they pick it up, maybe look around for a couple of seconds to pass the ball and then start dribbling. And too many officials call that a double dribble. But by definition, in the definition section of the rules, the most important part of the book, a dribble is an intentional act. You have to intend to push the ball you have to be in control of the ball and intentionally push the ball to the floor.
Yep.
So when you're trying to catch a pass, until you catch the pass, there's no player control. So that pass that bounces off a player's hand goes to the floor and then they pick it up is not a dribble. And I can tell you that I had a partner that called, actually, both my other partners last night called a double dribble on that play.
Wasn't me.
No, and I just had to kind of look the other way because it was, it was a blowout game. It really didn't matter. And, you know,
Yeah.
um,
And this is one of those situations, much like the catching your own air ball. That's why we get the paid bucks, pay the big bucks. We have to decide, was that or was that not an intentional batting of the ball to the floor? All right, same thing. And here's a good one I like to think. It's related. After picking up his or her dribble, A1 intentionally throws the ball off, and I meant to say off their backboard, the backboard that they are trying to score in, without hitting the rim. And that same player catches the ball in the air, returns to the floor, after which A1 again shoots and scores the goal. This is not a double dribble violation because Team A's backboard is not considered part of the floor. True or myth? Done dribbling. He's trapped. He throws it against the backboard, grabs that ball, and puts it right back up and in scores a goal. Play on or double dribble violation. This is, okay, here we go. All right, I think I might have finally gotten a few people on this one. Answers are coming a little more slowly. I can hear people's gears grinding a little bit more here. All right, last opportunity. Throw it in. I can't see anybody's scores or guesses, by the way. So if you get it wrong, don't worry. I won't tattle. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. The answer is, this is true. It's fine. It's a play on. Jim, I kind of explained the reasoning behind it in the question. Is there anything more you would like to add? And or is that the same for both backboards?
well, no, because if you're throwing it at a backboard, the backboard where the goal is you're trying to score on, just call that a try. Whether it is or isn't, if you come up with some, decide, oh, he was really just trying to avoid that, get out of that double team and wasn't trying to shoot, you're going to end up giving a technical foul and ejecting a coach because he's going to go nuts. He or she's going to go nuts. Just call that a try attempt, and player control, team control ends. You can start a new dribble or whatever after you get it. Now, at your defensive backboard, Team B's backboard, there's no reason why a player on Team A would be throwing the ball off of that backboard. It's considered like part of the floor. So that would be a dribble if that person threw it off the backboard and caught it. It's not a try. Shooting at the wrong basket is not a try. So it is, throwing it off the wrong backboard and catching it is a dribble.
Yep. So again, that's a good situation. I recently saw a highlight of this on the NBA where a player throws it off their own basket and they grab it and they go up and they shoot it. In high school, that is perfectly legal, and there is no provision, as far as I'm aware, Jim, for us to use our discretion in that kind of a situation. That is one where I think there's a casebook example of it as well, where if they throw it off their the backboard that they're trying to score in, it's not considered part of the floor. It's a try for goal, and it's like grabbing a rebound. All right. That was a good one. Let's keep moving here. A dribble that bounces higher than the dribbler's head and returns back to the waist height, after which the dribbler continues to dribble, should be called for an illegal dribble. Myth or truth? All right, moving right along. Answers are coming in. All right, I think we're good here. Most of us got this one. That is a myth. This is this is one where just because it looks weird or that ball is bouncing real high, it's not going to be a travel or an illegal dribble. Now, Jim, it could if some things happen with like the hand underneath the ball, maybe you can go into that. But you know, can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, there's no restriction on how high a dribble can be. The real restriction is, did they catch the dribble? And catching the dribble, meaning, their hand is underneath the ball, where you could either, travel by running while it happens, or more likely, double dribble. Carrying the ball is essentially a double dribble violation. Commonly referred to as carrying when you give this signal. In reality, it's a double dribble is what you're calling, because they caught the ball and then started dribbling again. So unless their hand is underneath the ball,
It's kind of a
it's
play
not
on.
going to be it's going to be a legal dribble.
Yeah. So I'm going to stop sharing that one. We have a question in the chat before we get too far away from that other question. The question is, throwing off the wrong backboard and the ball hits the ground. Would that be considered a double dribble? And let's make up the scenario real quick. I'm in the backcourt. I've picked up my dribble. Somebody's guarding me. I'm on count 6, count 7 in the backcourt, and I kind of freak out a little bit. And I throw the basketball off the other team's backboard. And without it touching another player, without it touching a teammate or anything, it hits the ground. I run over and I go grab it. That could be a travel. That could be an illegal dribble, because you, in essence, have passed it to yourself and illegally moved, the possession of the ball from one part of the floor to the other. Short answer is it would be a violation, whether we call that technically a double dribble or just an illegal dribble or a travel is
technically that's going to be a double dribble, really, by a rule. Now, if a teammate picks up the ball after the player throws it off the wrong backboard and hits the ground,
or a defender touches it and it grazes off his hand or something,
that's not going to be a dribble. If a teammate gets it, it's a pass. It's like bouncing it off the floor. It's a bounce pass, except it's a bounce off the backboard.
Yep. All right. Okay, good. I hope we answer that one. All right. Moving on here. On a try for goal, defense pinning the ball against the backboard is goaltending. Just boom, boom, pins it there. Just massive block. Myth or truth? All right, here. I think we got most people answering this one. Okay. Share the results. It is myth. Most of us got this one. Jim, I think it's important for us to know, again, look up the definition in the definition section of what is the definition of goaltending.
Yeah, here's the elements of goaltending. It has to be a try. The try has to be on its downward arc. It has to be above the rim with a chance to go in when it's touched by the defense. That is what goaltending is. Now, you also should look at the definition of basket interference. To understand the difference. Important to understand the difference. There's nothing wrong with pinning the ball against the backboard unless the ball is, on its downward arc above the rim. It's a try. Then it could be goaltending.
Yeah. So it could be if all four of those provisions are met, but in and of by itself, simply pinning the ball against the backboard isn't goaltending in and of by itself. All right. Now I think I have no, that might come later. All right, here we go. Moving on. Oh, this was kind of related one. Violently slapping the backboard by the defense while making a legitimate attempt to block a shot is only basket interference if it moves the rim enough to affect the shot attempt. Truth or myth? Violently slapping the backboard. I'm just this 6'10". I'm the left tackle from the football team, and I go up and I'm trying to block the shot. I just swing and I miss, and I slap that backboard so hard, rim shaking all around. It's only basket interference if that shaking of the rim causes the ball to be missed. Myth or truth? All right. I think we got most people chiming in here. And the correct answer is that's a myth. This is one that you'll see regularly on the MHSAA tests, and this is one that will probably get coaches jumping up out of their chair if it was their player that was going in for the layup. Jim, do you want to talk about what is our only option for a penalty in a situation like this, and what's the criteria for administering that particular penalty?
Yeah, slapping the backboard while trying to block a shot is legal, no matter how hard you slap it and no matter how hard it makes the backboard and rim shake. If you're really trying to block a shot, it's a legal play. What it can be a backboard slap if you're not trying to block a shot, if you're just showboating, hey, look how high I jumped, and listen to how loud this sound it makes when I slap the backboard. That's a technical foul.
Yeah. This situation can never be goaltending. The situation can never be basket interference. It is either a play on, if in your judgment they were making a legitimate attempt to block the shot, or it's a technical foul if you think they were showboating. Those are your only two options. And like we said before, Jim, this is why we get paid the big bucks for these judgment calls. What do you have kind of a default mindset when somebody is going up in a situation like this? What might be your default mindset?
Well, there's two things. Was there a reason why they were going up and swinging their arm? A legitimate basketball reason. And the only reason is trying to block a shot or maybe, swat a rebound away or whatever. Was there a legitimate basketball reason, to do that? If there was, play on. If there wasn't, then the question is, how showy was it? How loud was the slap? Was it offensive? Was it really, look at me, look what I just did? That type of slap, that's going to be a technical foul. If, it's just a touch, yeah, but it's your judgment.
Yeah.
And your judgment can be informed by what has this player done so far in the game? has this player been borderline in his behavior and how he's, his sportsmanship? Maybe that's, one where you say, okay, this kid's, now's
Suspect.
the time to get him.
Yeah. So one, was it a legitimate shot attempt or not? Was there a basketball reason for him to do that? And number two, if not, if it was not a legitimate attempt to block the shot and there wasn't a real reason for him to do that, just how showboaty was it to decide whether or not you're going to call a technical foul on him? So that's one that few, I don't want to say few, but not as many coaches as you would think, would understand the rule. All right, number 11, myth or truth. The ball touching the top of the backboard and falling in front of the backboard into the basket, scoring a goal is not out of bounds. Myth or truth? Jim and I had one like this the other day where we swear it didn't go into the hoop, but that ball, I swear, went all the way from one end of the backboard, rolled all the way across, did not touch a support, and then fell frontwards back into the court. Is that a play on, or is that a violation top of the backboard? So myth or truth? All right, looks like we got most of them. I'm going to end it, show the results. It is true. It's a play on. Top of the backboard in and of by itself is not a violation, is not out of bounds. But Jim, what are the two most common things when the ball is up there that it's going to end up being out of bounds and be a violation?
Yeah, it's gonna. What usually happens, or not usually, but often happens, is it hits a support pipe, behind the backboard, and some of them can be right near, the top edge of the backboard. Or it can hit the top of the backboard and bounce up and hit the wire that raises and lowers, the backboard. Those are out of bounds. Hitting the support, hitting the wire, or going over the top of the backboard is out of bounds. Now, in the rule book, there's an exception if you have a fan-shaped backboard. I don't see those anywhere but on people's driveways. I haven't seen one in a gym
In ages.
ever.
Yeah. All right. I think most of us got that one. Moving on. A defender must first obtain legal guarding position and remain stationary to draw a player control / charge foul. Is that a myth or is that truth? After they have obtained legal guarding position, they have to be planted in order to draw that player control charge foul. Myth or truth? All right, looks like we got about 2/3 chiming in here. I'll end it and I'll share the results. Uh-oh, I didn't put the results in on this one. But it is a myth. Once they have obtained legal guarding position, Jim, what can that defender, legally do and still draw that player control charge?
They can move laterally, or as the rule says, obliquely, which I suppose if you're in the military and march a lot, you might know what that means. But let's just say diagonally backwards is really what obliquely means. Yeah, once you have legal guarding position, which is basically 2 feet on the floor facing the player you're guarding, you can move to maintain your position in the path of that player. You can't move forward toward him, but you can move side to side within your horizontal plane, I guess, or you can move at an angle backwards, or you can even back up. You can keep moving. So I think most of us have read that and know that. And the biggest advice I could give people is when the coach complains get out of the habit of saying he was still moving because he can move.
Yeah, he can. And in today's game, we often don't have an opportunity very often to make that classic block or charge call when somebody's setting up on the block, right underneath the basket. We don't really have that opportunity anymore. A lot of the player control fouls now in today's game, because of the freedom of movement, is that point guard and defender, that point guard trying to get the edge and get around him and making that player control or block call closer to the elbow or even around the 3-point line or something. That is where you really have to have that proper understanding of legal guarding position and what can that defender do. But Shane, his feet were moving. Coach, that doesn't matter. He still had legal guarding position when he got an elbow to the chest. So yeah. All right, moving on. Let's see here.
And before we go on, just for the newer officials, if you referee the defense, if your focus is on the defense, you'll be able to spot whether there was legal guarding position and whether the defender maintained that position.
Focus on the defense to get that call right. Yep. All right. Next one. Not all moving screens are illegal. Myth or truth? Not all moving screens are illegal. You're probably thinking to yourself, wait, what? If it's a moving screen, isn't it illegal? Like, what? Not all moving screens are illegal. Truth or myth? All right, going to end it. I'm going to share it. It's true. I could be trying to set a screen and I can be moving around, but what's the one important thing that actually has to occur for it to be an illegal screen? Jim, you want to, it's kind of, they gotta actually.
There has to be contact. And you see a lot of players trying to set screens and they're moving, but the defender goes around it, or it's just a brush and doesn't really change the defender's path. And everyone will be the crowd will be screaming, he's moving. Well, so what? Now, if he moves into the path of the defender and doesn't give the defender, time and space to avoid him, then you'll have, an illegal screen, a team control foul and a blocking foul.
One that I've often seen, this is maybe done at some higher level games when the players kind of know what they're doing, which isn't always the case. A point guard will be dribbling the ball up the court. A defender is trying to tightly guard him and pressure him a little bit, bringing the ball up the court. Oftentimes, that person who threw the ball into the point guard will kind of run up alongside in front, maybe give a little interference to that defender, but it's almost happening in slow motion. And the defender just kind of bounces around that person trying to get back at the dribbler to pressure them. And the defensive coach wants an illegal screen. But I have to say, coach, there's no contact. Your defender's just kind of running around the other player. It can't be an illegal screen if there is no contact. All right. Cruising right along here. Got just a few more left. Over the back is a foul that we should call more often. Myth or truth? Over the back is a foul that we should call more often. Okay. I like that we're calling. I like the answers I'm seeing here. So I'll stop this one right now. Jim, why is this a myth?
There's no such foul as over the back.
Nope.
Get those words out of your vocabulary when you're when you're officiating and calling a foul. If a rebounder is displaced or prevented from jumping for the rebound, you'll have a foul, and it's usually a pushing foul, 2 hands like that. But there is no such foul as going over the back. Often the player behind that doesn't have, that has, let's call it inferior position, is just taller and can reach over the top and grab the ball, or can out jump the player who is trying to box out. It's not a foul unless the player with, let's call it better position, inside position, is displaced or prevented from jumping to get the ball.
Do not punish the more athletic, taller player simply because they were behind another player when trying to go up for that basketball. If they push them and gain an advantage, if they clutch and grab, if they hit that other person's arm and gain an advantage to get the ball, okay. And definitely don't ever report to the table foul 33 white over the back. No such thing. 33 white, push. 33 white, illegal contact. All right. Couple more here. Number 15. The team foul count should never be reset to 0 for overtime periods. The team foul count should never be reset to 0 for overtime periods. Truth or myth? All right, this is a good one. And by good one, I mean most of us got this one right. The answer is truth. And I mean, Jim, the simplest way to explain it is overtime is simply an extension of the fourth quarter, when it comes to team fouls, right? Number 16, got 3 more. During a free throw attempt, all players in designated lane spaces and standing behind the 3-point line extended free throw line may move into the lane or inside the 3-point line when the free throw is released, except for the free throw shooter. Is this a myth or is this truth? All of them can move into the lane after the free throw is released. All the players on the designated lane spaces and behind the 3-point line. Myth or truth? All right, I think we got most of them. It is a myth. I think in the NBA, why is this one a myth? It's a myth because if you are behind the 3-point line, free throw line extended, you can't go in until after that ball hits the rim. In the NBA, I think you can. And I've seen a lot of players more often trying to do this. So if you're that trail official, you got to watch for that. All right. And 2 more. During a free throw attempt after a technical foul, the other players do not have to stand behind the half court, in other words, division line. Myth or truth? Technical foul, you just whack the coach. All right, guys, get back, get back, get back. They do not, but they do not have to stand behind the half court line. Is that a myth or is that a truth? Ooh, I think we got it kind of evenly split here. Jim, that one's truth, and we got some kind of discordance here. I think this is a good one.
Yeah, this is one that I would say more than half the officials, enforce this improperly. The only rule is that no one can be in a lane space. It's just like a free throw, when someone gets fouled, at the buzzer, where, at the end of a period where you're shooting the free throws, there can be no one in lane space, but everyone else can be still on that side of half court as long as they're not inside the 3-point line or below the foul line extended.
Yep.
So, players could be over, if that's their bench is located over there, they could walk over there and talk to their coach while on that side of half court while the free throws are being shot.
Yep.
They're not required to be in the back court.
Yep. Now, why is that important? Because if White is shooting, Team A is shooting the technical fouls, and it is in the second half, their bench is on the same side that they're shooting free throws. So Team B's bench that is in the backcourt area calls his players over. Come here, come here, come here, come here. He's trying to get in some extra coaching. We cannot deny Team A's coach, whose bench area is in the front court. We can't deny him the same opportunity to bring his players over to do a little extra coaching while A1 is, shooting a couple technical foul free throws. So that's why that's important for us to kind of understand that, so we don't improperly give one team the advantage or disadvantage over the other. Now, if they want to go stand at half court and they're chilling there, let them. That's fine. Okay, last one. Player A1 is substituted for A6 late in the game while Team A is on defense. They're doing this to protect A1, who has 4 fouls. But after Team B violates during the throw-in, Team B gets freaked out, and he steps on the line and he violates. Team A is getting the ball back. No time has gone off the clock because the ball never got thrown in. A6 must remain on the floor and play at least 1 second. But A1 could sub in for a different Team A player. Is this a myth or is this truth? I intentionally left the hardest one for the end. And I think this is one that maybe a lot of us have maybe kind of experienced and maybe have kind of had this thought in our head, but maybe we've never really kind of looked up the rule, the case play. All right, I think we got most people answering. It's a myth. It's a myth. Now, there is a rule in here that's important for us to understand. Jim, in this situation, what is the restriction? What can A6 do? What can A1 do or not do?
So the restriction is on the player who comes out of the game in the substitution. In this case, it's A1. A player who is substituted out of a game can't come in until 1 tick has gone off the clock. A player who subs into the game doesn't have to stay in the game for 1 tick. Anyone else could sub in for him. There's no limit on how long you have to stay on the court. There is a limit on how long someone has to stay off the court.
So another common example might be coach for Team A is called for a technical foul. Team B's coach wants to sub in B6 for B1 because he's a 95% free throw shooter. B6 comes in, boom, boom, hits the 2 technical foul shots. Now the coach wants to sub B7, who has been sitting all game or, for a few minutes now, to sub out B6 because B6 is only, 4.5 feet tall and can't do anything but shoot free throws. They could do that. B6 does not have to stay in the game, even though no time is ticked off the clock. The only restriction is B1, who B6 subbed out, B1 has to stay on the bench for at least one tick of the clock. So, all right, that's it. I hope
Any questions on any of these?
I hope some of these were interesting. I hope some of these were maybe just a refresher. But does anybody have any questions or anything? And it's okay if you don't. And if you're watching this on the YouTube recording, I can't hear you. So, right now, the only thing I do want to say though is oftentimes we use this meeting to discuss when some things happen in our game. A player is ejected, technical fouls, fights, that kind of a thing. Because we've gone over those in the last few years, what I'm going to do is I'm going to, along with the meeting recording, I'm going to send all the other links about how to handle these situations, which we always and do have on our website, metrodetroitathleticofficials.com. But I'll send those hyperlinks for you to review on your own. All I can say is take the opportunity to review them. If you've never been in a game where two players have fought or somebody swung or you've had to, eject a player, your brain could be moving pretty fast. You will want to know the rules and know the situations. The only other thing I would like to say is verbally is one, if you do have to eject a player for unsportsmanlike behavior, either a flagrant technical, double technical, or a coach, or a game administrator or something, you got to toss somebody. You have to write a report. It's not optional. You must go into the MHSA website and type in a report and the information. While you're there, if you have to eject a player, an assistant coach, etc., the report will ask for the number of the player and name. You could ask the scorebook keeper, give me a piece of paper, write down the name of number 13. I need it for the report. Please write down the name of that assistant coach. I need it for the report. And then finally, Jim, maybe you can give just some very brief tips. And there is a tip document I'll include, but about writing a report. What is a good technique and good rule of thumb to consider when you are writing an ejection report on the MHSAA website?
Don't say more than you have to. Just who, what, when, why, where, is really it. So, what Shane said about having someone at the scorer's table get you a piece of paper. Yeah, write down the time of the ejection, the name and number of the person ejected, the score at the time of the ejection, all that relevant game information. You're also going to need to know, who your partners were, which you can always look up on Arbiter if you don't know them. Usually in a varsity game, I know who the partners are, but sometimes you're working in, other games, if you're, moving up to the varsity level or moving down to work at a level you normally don't work at, you don't know the people, but you can always look up their names because they ask you who the crew is. And, if some player tells you, to fuck off, when you type the report, type in, he told me to fuck off. Say the words. Don't put a bunch of, don't just say he swore at me. Put the words in so it's plain as day to everyone what he said and why you did it. Don't be embarrassed by writing it. They expect you to write the actual words that were said. Don't speculate as to why someone did something or go into vivid detail about what may have happened to lead up to this or whatever. Just say what the player or the coach did.
Yep. Don't say the coach said with an angry tone. No, you are inferring. That's a subjective thing. You can say the coach screamed across the floor, fuck you, Shane. That's okay. That is a statement of fact. But you can't say he said that with, anger in his eyes. This isn't a piece of fictional drama. Just the facts, Jack. With that said, Jim, you got anything
Yeah,
for anyone?
just some things particularly for the less experienced officials and dealing with coaches. We don't talk about that enough. And you know, just things that coaches do. Shouting at you across the court. That's a no-no. It should at least get an official, put it in the book, sportsmanship warning. Depending on what they shout, it might be a technical foul. If they shout, you suck, that's a technical. If they're just complaining about a call, that's probably just a warning, unless you've already warned them, or, this is the straw that broke the camel's back, then maybe it's a technical. Um, a coach talks about your partner, shouts about your partner in a demeaning way. That's going to be a technical. An example, we had a game. It was an OAA game, and there was a marginal call, and one head coach, started shouting across the court at my partner. And I think my partner didn't want to give him a technical because he knew it was kind of a marginal call. And you don't usually, when you think you may have kicked a call, you don't really want to pile on unless the coach really deserves it. Well, this coach kept going, and my partner was trying not to pile on, because I think, he realized it wasn't his best call. Finally, this coach goes, "Hey, I'm shouting at you across the court," which is his way of saying, "Please give me a technical foul." He's trying to raise, get one, asking for him. Well, give it to him. And that's what happened. So that's, shouting across the court. Some other things. You might be in front of a coach, and a coach wants to complain about your partner's call or your partner in general. He might say, "Shane, Jim is killing me today. Help him out." Well, what can you say? If he's not shouting that at you, if he's just telling you that, what you might say is, "Well, it's funny, coach. The other coach was saying the same thing about me." Just something to diffuse the situation and let it go. A coach might say, um, you know, "Shane, what the hell was Jim calling there?" An answer Shane might give is, "Well," and this is probably the best answer, "Jim will be in front of you soon enough. You can ask him."
Jim is somebody who will talk with you. When he gets here, ask him the question. Now, we all know very often in the next 30 seconds after we rotate and Jim gets in front of that coach probably isn't even going to remember. But that's what you can say, is because oftentimes you just have to acknowledge the coach is trying to express an opinion to you, and you just have to give the acknowledgement that you have heard that opinion.
Now, if the coach says, "That asshole Jim is screwing me again," that's probably a technical. I'd say that's pretty automatic, a technical. But if he's just complaining about a call or saying Jim's killing me, that's something just acknowledge it and let it go by. Gestures from a coach. A wave off, like, "Oh, that call stunk." That's a technical. That's a
Pretty
tech.
much when coaches give a large visual display that of dissatisfaction that everyone can see, you're kind of not left with much options.
Yeah. Holding your arms up in the air like, what the hell was that? Let me back up so you can see it, like, and looking around like, I don't believe what I just saw. That's going to be a technical from the coach. Gestures incite the crowd and just show a general lack of respect. Those are technicals. They're not warnings. They're technicals.
Jim, along those same lines, I want to give some credit to you on your pregame. During the pregame, where we bring in the head coaches and the captains, Jim will say sportsmanship to the players. Who's the speaking captain? Okay, good. Guys, shake hands, warm up. And then before the coaches leave, Jim will say, head coach John, head coach Jim, you are the leaders of your program. People follow your lead. And you want to share a little bit more about that because you really kind of bring it to their attention that
Yeah, I just
people
say,
follow their lead.
coaches, your coaches, you're the leaders. The players and the fans follow your example. So, set the example for sportsmanship for everyone to see.
Yep. And
Any
most
questions? And
Yep.
if there are coaches I know well who, I don't give the same rote to every coach. I mean, I did with Shane a game with Troy and Clarkston, and I've God knows how many games I've officiated with those coaches, as has Shane and Rick Massa, who was on the game too. And with those coaches, after all I say is, you guys have been around, you know the drill, be good sports, and I walk away because I don't have to explain things to them because they know it.
Yeah.
But other ones, you do need to explain. You set the tone for sportsmanship.
Or
And
they
it's
may
true.
or
If they,
maybe they've been a coach for 20 years and you've been a referee for 20 years, but this is the first game you've interacted together. You kind of want to lay
yeah,
out what your expectations are.
yeah.
So
Another thing about pre-games, the less you get into detail, the better. There is an official who used to hand out cards which said, no hand checking, no this, no that. And then, of course, the first time there was, maybe a hand check call or something that might be, the coach is holding up the card saying, hey, you said you were going to call that tonight. And whether or not you hold out the card or just tell people, hey, let's keep our hands to ourselves, whatever, don't say that because you box yourself in. Now, the first time there's a marginal situation where you don't make the call, they're going to be yelling at you about what you told them in the coaches meeting. It doesn't do any good talking to the players other than reminding them about sportsmanship. All they want to do is get out of there and go warm up. They're not going to remember, any or care about any little detail you tell them about the rules. Just get it over with. I work with a lot of partners to say, hey, break up the huddle at the first horn, get them out there on the second. Well, what are you going to do? Put the ball on the floor every time? If one coach gets his team out there and the other doesn't, now the coach is expecting you to enforce that, really strictly. You box yourself in the more you say in that coaches and captains meeting.
and
Because
so
nothing you say is going to change their behavior in terms of fouling, not fouling.
yeah. So it's not that is not important to get teams out on the first horn. It's not that it's not important to have the players tuck in their jerseys. The point is you have a very limited attention span during that pregame. Focus on the important stuff, setting the sportsmanship tone. And if you hit that, you hit it hard, I think things are going to go pretty well for you. Jim, anything else you wanted to kind of talk about communicating?
I think that's
coaches?
about it. Unless someone has some questions and wants to stick around, well, we can answer. But everyone else, Shane, when's our next meeting?
Well, our next meeting is in February, and I'm going to go to www.metrodetroitathleticofficials.com. And I'm going to go to meetings and events. And it says that our next meeting is Wednesday, February 21st. It's currently scheduled for 6:30 p.m. and virtual. And of course, there will be reminders about that coming up. But yeah, so kind of right before districts and stuff, before things get really fun.
Hey, the last thing I want to say is, hey, if anyone's going to Groves to officiate, Tom Flynn has been a great friend to our association and prior associations in letting us use Groves for meetings, for clinics. Tom is retiring at the end of this school year, so if you have a chance to see him and thank him, do so. He's been just a prince of an athletic director and a great help to us.
And I will use the word, he's been an advocate for officials of all sports. And when you get athletic directors like that, acknowledge them. With that, we'll let you go. Thank you for joining us. And everybody who's watching this on the recording, I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to view and watch us. We'll hang around for a quick second just in case there are a couple of last minute questions that people didn't want to ask in front of everybody else. To all those, drive safe wherever you're going and have fun.